I'm just trying to human. Hey y'all, welcome back to Falling Off Curbs. I'm your host Kat, and as always, I am so tickled to have you here with me today. Today we're going to talk about something tough but necessary, and it's something that I know has hit me square in the chest more times than I'd like to admit, and maybe y'all too, right? We've all been in a situation where something just keeps going wrong and we are convinced that it's someone else's fault, right? It is not me, it is clearly you. Only to stop and realize, wait a minute. Am I the problem? And then that very humbling next moment when we realize, oh gosh, I'm the problem. Yeah, we're going to go there today, y'all. So in this episode, we're going to talk about self-reflection and accountability, and the grace to admit when we've been standing in our own way. So grab a seat, grab a snack, grab whatever feels right, and let's jump on in. Okay, let's start with why admitting we are or even might be the problem is so difficult, right? Our brains are wired to protect us. And by us, I mean this includes our ego. And it's easier to point our fingers at some external factor or some external thing than to take an honest look in the mirror. And we avoid facing our role in a situation by either denying it or shifting blame or even getting defensive. And honestly, I think we've kind of been conditioned to think this way, right? We've all, again, had that moment where we said internally or out loud, if they hadn't done X, Y, Z, I wouldn't have reacted that way. I know personally, I say ridiculous things like, look what you made me do. You provoked me, right? All of these are just coping mechanisms, but they're coping mechanisms that keep us stuck. And self-preservation isn't the only thing that makes us believe we're not the problem. There are really so many reasons. Number one, lack of awareness. For some people, it really is a lack of awareness. They genuinely don't see their role in a situation because they never developed or never had to develop the skills to self-reflect. So it's not about willful ignorance. It's really about a gap in understanding that keeps them from taking responsibility. Next, pride. Ooh, Pride Honey is the main character in the I'm Not the Problem sitcom. And as my mama would say, pride don't feed no dogs. What does that mean? I have no idea, but I know exactly what it means, right? Admitting fault can feel like a hit to our ego, especially if we've built our identity around being competent or around being right. In most circumstances, it's really not easy to say I messed up when we fear it could make us look weak or less capable. But I think the irony of it is owning our mistakes actually shows a lot of strength. And yet, even when we muster and gather up the courage to look at ourselves, there's often another layer of fear that appears, and that's the fear of consequences. Let's keep it a stack, y'all. Acknowledging that we're the problem does feel scary because it means confronting the possibility that we've hurt someone or we've made a mistake that has real outcomes and consequences. It's not fun and it's not easy, but it really is absolutely necessary because accountability is the bridge between awareness and growth. Once you are aware, you are responsible. Like the old folks say, once you know better, you do better. And y'all, awareness is a gift and responsibility because it calls us to act in alignment with what we've learned. And sometimes that awareness shines a light on things we are not quite proud of, but it also gives us the power to change them. Let's say the first step is admittance. We know that. But then what happens when we don't take that step? What's the cost of us not owning our stuff? What's the cost of us avoiding accountability? One of the major things is understanding that not being accountable doesn't actually make anything better. It doesn't necessarily like lighten the proverbial load. It adds to it. And so now we're carrying around the weight of unaddressed issues, which really is exhausting, right? It's just one thing after another. We're just layering it on like it's pizza or lasagna, right? Think about it. Every time we deflect or deny, we add another layer of complexity to something that most times really ain't that deep. That most times really could be resolved with a little bit of honesty and a little bit of effort. So then what happens when we avoid accountability? Our relationships suffer, whether the relationships with a significant other, with our families, with our friends, at work, with our cats and dogs for a little razzle dazzle, and it erodes trust, and then that stalls our personal growth. You might find yourself, or we find ourselves stuck in the same patterns, and we're facing the same conflicts over and over and over again. Now, professionally, I think that avoiding accountability just damages our reputations, and then it limits opportunities because now I don't know. Your coworkers are looking at you funny. Your boss is looking at you funny. Like, why is it that every time something happens, you're out here with your hands up? What's going on there? I don't know if I can trust you, right? That erosion of trust. And then emotionally, it creates this disconnect between who we are and who we want to be. So like accountability isn't about fixing problems. It's really about opening the door to better relationships, to stronger connections, and just to a deeper sense of integrity. Now, let's look at society, y'all, because y'all know I love to drag society into everything because we live in it. But for real, there are a lot of societal forces that make accountability even harder to like get on board with. First and foremost, we are swimming in a culture that oftentimes glorifies being right. Social media, the Snapchats, Al Gore's internet, it really does encourage like canceling people and clapping back and just winning arguments for the sake of winning the argument at all costs. But what happens is when we focus only on proving a point, we miss the actual point, right? Admitting we have a problem or we're the problem, it takes so much humility. And humility isn't, let's be real, y'all. Humility is not a quality that is always celebrated in a time when our highest aspiration is being right. Again, y'all, pride don't feed no dogs. And at this point, the dogs are starving, right? All right, so story time. Y'all know we're going to always tell a story. I'm going to talk about my divorce. And not in a slanderous way because that's completely unnecessary and not true. But I'm going to talk about my part in it and how I really got to this big space of having to ask myself, am I the problem? Oh gosh, I'm the problem, right? So 10 years with the person, great guy, like really solid dude, still solid dude. And you're with someone for that long and then things don't work out. Nothing crazy going on, nothing crazy happening, but things don't work out. And then you're, again, like I talked about, I think in How Did I Get Here, the first episode, you're left with yourself, right? And it's easy it would have been easy for me to just point the finger and say all of the things that I got right and all of the things that my ex-spouse got wrong. But the reality is, no ma'am. The reality is I had to sit and do some thinking. I had to do some work. I had to work on some self-awareness and I had to own some stuff, right? No, we know no one is perfect. And so perfection was never, it's not a real thing. It is the hindrance to progress. But we know no one is perfect, but it's easy again, when, especially in relationship with significant others, to say, well, it was them, not me. right? I did everything I was supposed to do. Here's the thing. We talked about it. Two things can be true at the same time. You did do everything you were supposed to do, but Kat, did you do it to the best of your ability? Right? Did you take in consideration all of the complexities of another person's experience? And if you did that, was there still a better way for you to have done something? Come on, right? It helps us. Well, I won't even say us, me, because I might be the only one divorced talking at this point. It helped me to be in owning my part. It helps me to grow so that in the next relationship I'm in, I can really practice that at a higher level of awareness. I can practice saying, what am I doing, right, to contribute to this situation or the circumstance, dare I say the problem? What is my part in it? How am I contributing? And sometimes, for real, again, you just got to sit with it and you got to live with it and you got to let it be what it is, no matter how much you hate it, how uncomfortable it is. That's real self-reflection, which is really, y'all, it's so crucial in this whole thing about admitting that you're the problem. Let me start by saying, since we're moving into self-reflection, let me say that self-reflection is not about beating yourself up. It is about creating space for you to sit back and to understand some things and to learn some things and then grow from said things. When we stop and ask ourselves, what role did I play in this situation? What was my part? We are opening doors to self-awareness, which is the foundation of change. But awareness without accountability, no ma'am, no sir. Absolutely not. When we have awareness without accountability, we just have knowledge. And having knowledge but doing nothing with it is a moot point. It is useless and it is not helpful, because accountability is the thing that transforms awareness into action. Again, when you know better, you do better. And the doing is what helps us to show up differently, both for ourselves and for other people in our spaces and our lives. But I'm moving ahead a little too fast here. Let's take a step back, because I think it's important that we talk about understanding what accountability is, and more importantly, what it's not. Again, let's start by saying that accountability does not mean taking blame for things that aren't yours to own. It's not about being a martyr, and it's not about shouldering responsibility for other people's actions. This is all about you. And true accountability is recognizing your role and your role only. It's about saying, here's where I could have done better, without taking on what doesn't belong to us. And so it's important to know this, and know that sometimes asking and answering that question can mean that other people see us, which is real scary, and not just that they can see us, but how they'll see us, right? We're having to deal with the fear of being judged by other people. That's just another added layer to us avoiding owning that we're the problem. Because what if people suddenly see us differently? Yeah. What if then they lose respect? But if I'm being honest, who cares? Who cares? Whether we know it or not, most people really do understand that accountability earns respect because it shows integrity, which we all, no matter how, superficial we may be or act or whatever, we do know that integrity is far more valuable than maintaining this image of always being right. But let's go a little deeper, y'all. Let's talk about my favorite thing to talk about, trauma. But really, trauma, for many of us, the struggle with accountability, it really is rooted in past trauma. If I've admitted fault in the past and the outcome was that I was punished for it or I was humiliated for it, I'm really not apt to quickly jump into owning a daggone thing, because I'm not fidna catch a single other L. Absolutely not, under no circumstances. Got to be more careful. So trauma does shape how we interact with accountability, particularly because it feels unsafe. And rightfully so, we don't like things or we don't do things that make us feel unsafe. But this is the growth part of assuming responsibility. Assuming accountability. Over time, it feels less and less unsafe until it's just an important part of your existence, right? You did the work, we did the work, but per usual, there's always someone that hasn't done the work that you have to interact with, that you got to engage with. They haven't done the work and they refuse to be accountable. They 10 toes down and it's not me, it's you. So what do you do in those situations? What do we do? First, let's recognize that their accountability or lack thereof isn't within our control. We focus on our own growth and we focus on our own integrity. And if this particular situation or whatever it is involves a relationship, we then honestly, y'all, we got to consider whether the lack of accountability is something we can work through together, or if it's creating a boundary we need to now address, right? This ain't got nothing to do with anybody else. It is us stepping into the truth, regardless of what someone else does or doesn't do. So here I am. I'm minding my good business, trying to understand the importance of admitting the problem. And then suddenly, boom, Bob's your uncle. I now have to figure out how to actually do it. Like, how do I become accountable? Like the doing. I realized that I needed to start by recognizing resistance, my own resistance. So we tend as humans to resist by way of either deflecting or justifying, right? I'm not a deflector. I don't tend to deflect like, ooh, a spoon. Like that's not my vibe. But when I am in feeling the resistance, it's because I'm aware that I do have proclivities. Y'all know I like that word. Proclivities to justify whatever I did or whatever just happened and what part I was playing. Literally, I begin to feel like now I need to defend myself. So whenever I start feeling that, I learn that, okay, that's just signal to pause. Sis, like hold your pony. And now, ask yourself, why am I avoiding this? What am I avoiding by not taking any responsibility here? And then we have to deal with whatever that is, whatever it may be. We got to deal with it. If I'm being honest, y'all, it oftentimes truly is just we don't like discomfort. We don't like the uncomfortability that comes with us having to hold ourselves responsible and then accountable to the part that we may have played in anything. And accountability starts when we are willing to sit in that discomfort. We're willing to be uncomfortable, and then we learn from the discomfort what we're feeling so that we can take actionable steps forward to deal with whatever the thing is, and then being able to be more accountable. And here's the beautiful thing. Accountability, it's not just about fixing what's broken. It's really about creating something better in its place, right? Instead of doing that, I can do this. Instead of doing that, I can do this, right? We're working to create something better. We're replacing old things with better things, new things. But let me take a quick tangent about something. It doesn't, I have seen it, I have experienced it, y'all. It doesn't take much for accountability to very quickly turn into self-loathing, right? And self-loathing is that strong and persistent feeling of really, really intense self-criticism. And sometimes for some of us, even like a hatred of ourselves. So let's take a second to dig into that just for a moment. I think it's so important for us to understand the balance that we have to strive to strike. And that's owning our mistakes without letting them define us. That can be hard sometimes, especially if we have done the same thing over and over and over and over and over and again. It almost feels like it's a part of us, right? It's a part of our DNA. It's just how we've always done it. It's how we've always responded, how we've always reacted. And so it's easy for us to think it defines us. Y'all, we're going to mess up. We're going to mess up, all of us, in one way, shape, form, or fashion. That's just a part of being a human. That's a part of our human experience. What I learned is the key is to learn from those mistakes and then for real, like keep moving forward, like keep going. Don't get stuck there. And you move forward because of what? Because of grace. And grace, let me say this, grace is not about letting ourselves off the hook. Not at all. It's about acknowledging our humanity, our experience, and then giving ourselves the space to grow, right? We're growing in the discomfort or because of discomfort. And grace keeps us from turning the beautiful self-awareness and accountability into self-loathing and self-criticism, because that ain't it. Grace is not just a concept that helps us to feel good. It's not a feel good concept. It's not just that. It really is the essential part of real change. Real change can't happen without grace, because without it, accountability feels like punishment. But with it, accountability becomes an opportunity, because grace is what allows us to confront the truth about ourselves without shame, which then in turn makes it easier for us to turn the truth into action, for us to walk in the truth. So grace is such a necessary part of this whole thing, because when it's paired with accountability, they're a powerful combination that really just enables growth. Now, y'all know by now what I'm about to do, okay? Because I'm always talking about my Lord, yes indeed. So for me, my relationship with Him it's not just a huge role in how I approach grace. It's the central role. It's the foundation of how I not only approach grace, but also how I receive it from Him. You know, my Bible says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I love this verse because it reminds me that even at my lowest moments, when I'm feeling like, girl, you messed up. You were the drama. You were the villain, girl, right? Those low moments, it helps me to remember that God's grace covers me. It's not an excuse to stay stuck, right? The grace is not allowing me to stay stuck, but it's a reminder that I'm not defined by my failures. It's grace that gives me the strength to keep going. It's grace that keeps me learning, and grace that keeps me to keep showing up. And that's what this journey is all about. It's about learning, it's about growing, and it's about showing up, even when, or dare I say, specifically when, especially when it's hard. I heard someone say that mercy is not getting what we deserve, while grace is getting what we don't deserve. So if God offers me grace, He gives it. He gives the grace, right? Who am I to deny it? Who am I to deny it being extended to me? And then naturally, who am I to not extend it to other people, right? How, let's get that. So now the question becomes, how do I accept grace? How do I accept the grace that comes with accountability? It's like the more you pull back, the more you answer. You get one question, you answer it, and there's another question lying in the next level. And that's good, because that's how we're growing. We're answering the questions. So here we are now at how do I learn to accept the grace that comes with accountability? I don't know about y'all, but I be talking to myself all the time. I have conversations in my head, and dare I admit to saying sometimes out loud when I'm in a quiet and empty space. I talk to myself. And so I learned that I am able to receive grace by talking to myself like I would talk to a friend. I started imagining what I would say to a friend who's feeling just down about a mistake they made or something they did. Whatever the thing is that they did, whatever it was, I know whatever it is that I would say to them, it would be said with kindness and encouragement. So I gave and I still do work to give myself that same energy of, if I make a mistake, if I have a failure and I'm owning accountability for it, I got to give myself grace and encouragement. Another thing that I'll add is it's the importance of learning how to separate a person from a behavior. Remember, just because we make mistakes, it doesn't mean we're bad people. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some bad people. Yeah, there are bad people in this world. And there's a small sect of people in the bad people population. There are some bad people that do good things. And so there's even more good people that just make mistakes, for real. And understanding grace, it allows us to own those mistakes while still believing and moving in goodness. It doesn't take away from us at all. So it's important for us to receive it and to learn how to walk in it and extend it to ourselves, because we cannot give to anybody else what we don't give to ourselves first. So as we're wrapping up, I will say that I always enjoy walking through this, because every time I do, it reminds me of the beautiful and humbling and empowering journey of self-reflection and accountability. And while it can be, it oftentimes still is hard to admit when I'm the problem. I'm learning that there's so much power in owning my mistakes and understanding the connection between awareness and accountability. And it's with this understanding that I can then allow myself to receive grace so that I can grow and keep growing, right? So I hope this is what you all are picking up. And if the episode resonated with you all, please subscribe. Always open to you leaving a message or a review. And maybe share it with someone who might need a gentle reminder that accountability really is a gateway to growth. It's not a punishment, right? So next week, we're going to dive right on into the art of letting go. And we're going to talk about the beauty and the grief and the absolute necessity of letting go of people and places and things that are no longer healthy for us. And ooh, child, this is going to be something to talk about, because I find that I do this thing a lot, y'all, for better or worse, but we'll get into it. As always, thank y'all so much for listening. Remember, growth starts with honesty, and honesty starts with you. And so until next time, friends, stay curious, stay kind, and stay true to your journey. Talk soon. I'm just trying.